Dudes and dudettes, welcome to the first episode of the Gnarly versus Rad podcast. I'm your host, Gnarly, where every episode I'll bring on a special guest and we have a conversation about something that has to do with the 80s, and we'll talk about it, and then we're going to ask you, the viewers, to vote on what you think. So I'm Gnarly. Every week someone else is going to be Team Rad, and we're going to hash it out, but we're going to let the fans decide what they think. So this week, I can't believe it. Amazing guest from an amazing movie. When I was younger, I really identified with this movie, and there was nothing like it when it came out. The Lost Boys was just the coolest thing. When I was younger, I was already kind of dressing kind of metal, had a leather jacket, stuff like that. People told me that I looked kind of like David, I guess because I had a mullet and blonde hair, but that was about as far as it went. And so this movie has a kind of a special place in my heart. Some of the characters, like I said, people used to tell me I look like David. Not all the time, but a couple people said, hey, you know what? Like, you kind of remind me of David. So that was cool. And some of the other characters that I really identified with, Corey Haim's character, Sam. I had a really good friend named Archie, God rest his soul. But he reminded me a lot of Sam. He was a free spirit. He was his own dude. He dressed like he was the first person I knew that had Jordans before anyone else had Jordans. And he wore parachute pants. He had a Michael Jackson zipper jacket. And but he was a skater. So he combined that. He would wear like military gear with this like hip hop kind of flair. He was just like the coolest kid. And he was one of my best friends growing up and throughout our older years, until he passed away. But so he kind of reminds me of Sam, just the fact that he's funny and he'll he's a free spirit, did whatever he wanted and would say whatever he wanted. So he always kind of reminded me of Archie. And then of course, a lot of people's like favorite characters to follow are the Frog brothers, Alan and Edgar Frog. And that of course is Corey Haim and Jamison Newlander. And Jamison was gracious enough to come on my show. And he's a very busy guy. He's a writer, actor, director, producer. And he has 2 kids. So he's super busy, but also super gracious and really cool. And he was one of the characters that I identified with. That he and I say it in the show that the job of an actor is to make people believe it. But if you can make people feel like I know someone like this person, the person will become even more attached to that movie. So he reminded me of a friend I had growing up, Teddy. And so him and Alan mixed together were like the perfect combination of who Teddy was. Teddy was real quiet and brooding, a tough guy. To those who didn't know him, he was kind of scary, maybe a little off-putting. But when you got to know him, so that would be the Alan Frog side. When you get to know him, he was more like the Edgar side, talkative and funny, and always had crazy ideas. And we would go zombie hunting sometimes, and he gave me so many weapons. He would give me like Chinese stars and knives and spears and nunchucks, and he always was strapped with some sort of ninja weapon. He didn't wear sneakers. He wore ninja slippers. And he would sneak around to people's houses and bang on his friends and like bang on the bedroom window just to scare you, or he'd be waiting outside. It was hilarious. So he was totally like the Frog brothers combined. He was real brooding and quiet to people who didn't know him, but once you got to know him, he was more like Edgar Frog, talkative and funny, had funny ideas. But he believed his hype. Like he believed that he was a ninja, and he took some classes and stuff like that. But just like the Frog brothers, the fun thing about those guys is that they weren't in on the joke. They really believed it, and Jamison did a great job in the movie conveying that these are the kind of guys. And I know that there's people that know people just like probably everyone, almost everyone in this movie. So it's just identifiable. And another thing is they take a strong look at the family dynamic. And we compare the Freelings versus the Emersons. This is a fun podcast. Again, Jamison, I can't thank you enough for coming on my show, man. I really, really appreciate it. This is a fun one. Welcome everybody to the first episode, the flagship episode of Gnarly versus Rad. I'm your host, Gnarly, and we talk about some of the greatest arguments in entertainment history from the 80s to the early 90s. And this week I have an amazing guest, and I'm very thankful to have him join me. He's Team Rad this week, and if you want to introduce yourself, I'd appreciate that.
Hey, this is Jamison Newlander. I played Alan Frog in the movie The Lost Boys, and I guess I'm representing Rad, Team Rad.
Yes,
Yeah,
you are Team Rad. You are Team Rad. Well, so you've been in a lot of stuff. I mean, you've done a lot of stuff. Wait, is that your symbol?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, I was like in Lost Boys around that time. That's what I used to do all the time.
Yeah. Yep. That's awesome. That's
I was
awesome.
like, it looked like an R, like a Rad, but that's dumb. I don't know. Or
Oh
maybe
no,
like
no,
that.
that's super creative. Yeah, that's that's awesome.
Mhm.
And I guess I'll be G. I don't know if that's working.
Yeah,
That's
that does. That does.
close enough. So, man, I definitely want to talk about Lost Boys, and but you've been in so many things, and you've done so much, and the newest thing that you've been in, Mr. Manhattan. I haven't had a chance to check that out. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, totally. I'm there's also I did another movie with those guys that's going to be out this next month, I think, with Carlos and Carlos the Pena Vegas, basically. Carlos and Pena Vega. Anyway, yeah, so basically, my friend Brian Herzlinger, who shows up in a lot of '80s ways. He was his big thing was My Date with Drew. I don't know if you remember that movie where he tries to get a date with Drew. Anyway, he's become a director, really talented dude, really good director, and so he's brought me into a bunch of his projects. And Mr. Manhattan is one where I don't think I've ever played a lawyer. This is like a lawyer part. It's not a huge part. I'm still sort of like coming back from having kids and everything. I'm not getting the huge parts yet again, but they're coming. But it's a nice solid supporting part. And the movie it's a really lovely movie. The great thing about working with Carlos and Alexa is that they're married. They have really good chemistry together. So these movies they get really kind of magical, because that's how it can be when you're like looking at two people who are really in love or who are also acting that way. So
Sure. Yeah.
so that's the exciting part of Mr. Manhattan. And also the next one I think is called either Get Him Back for Christmas, or that might have been the working title, but it'll be announced pretty soon as
Okay.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Excited to hear about that. So you've never played an attorney before, but you did play a mayor before.
Yes, you're right. In Bone Tomahawk. Yeah.
That was amazing. And you know what's funny? So I watched that a long time ago. I rewatched it for our conversation, and I was gonna write down. I was just getting ready to write down troglodytes, and I'm like, how do you spell? And that's right when you came in with the line. How do you spell troglodytes? I need it for the telegram. I was like, well,
Right,
that's
right.
that was
Yeah. I was honored that so Craig who made that movie, another friend of mine, he we sort of like knocked around a bit in New York together when I was living in New York, and he asked me to do that part, and I looked at it and I was like, you're giving me the button of the scene. This is great. I mean, it's like all these great actors in that scene. That scene is like packed with all these awesome actors, and it's
right.
like I'm the one that gets that button, the chocolate.
That was also, it was a great line. It was a perfect line, man. And you've been on screen with so many amazing actors, and and back to Lost Boys. And we're going to talk more about that. That's part of the Gnarly versus Rad conversation. But just what I was briefly telling you about, like me feeling a connection to you. It's amazing as an actor when you can get people to believe you, right? But if you can get people to feel like they know you, like that's incredible. And that's what you did. Like I know that I felt like, oh man, I feel like I had a friend like him, like Alan Frog, And actually, there's between you and Corey Feldman, between the two Frog brothers, I did have a friend that was almost exactly the combination of both of you.
Really?
And he thought he was a ninja. We went zombie hunting and stuff like that. It was amazing. But yeah, and you did it, and just the way that you guys are, like, you're not in on the joke, but
Right.
and I love that. And the one scene, there's a real famous picture of you where you're just it's during when he's in the comic book shop, when Corey Haim's in the comic book shop, and you're just like, Yeah, I can't do it. But you're gritting your teeth and you have your mouth open and say like you hate him so much, but you're
Like
gonna
a
help.
little snarl,
There
a
it
little.
is, the
Yeah,
snarl.
right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like it's probably the funny thing about that moment is that it's like Joel Joel Warner, the director, Joel Schumacher, he from the beginning he was like, you guys are tough. Like, do not fake it. You are tough. Like, and 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 it just that kind of like snarl thing. It's like they come to you for your coverage. You're shooting the scene, and it's like then it's on you, and they're getting your coverage. And like what are you going to do? What are you going to do when you don't have a line in that moment? And so it's like just that it just sort of bubbled up from this like toughness that Joel made us be, that I started snarling at him. So it was like this kind of like actual moment that happened.
Yeah, it was so real. Like the vitriol, the venom that you felt for him at that moment. But at the same time, you're gonna help him. That was
Yeah.
that was conveyed in that scene, and that was really cool, man. And how does it feel, speaking of Joel Schumacher, how does it feel that, he said that the Frog Brothers are two of my favorite characters in any movie ever? That's amazing, man.
Yeah, you know what? I wish that I had talked to him about that. Like, I really sort of found out that I mean, I knew he loved us. He really loved us, but I thought he felt that way about everybody. All the characters in it, which I think he did to an extent. I mean, everybody was a, you know, was a child. Was his child in a way. The whole movie was like his child. So, um, but I wish I had. It goes back to the fact that I wish I had had a better adult, longer relationship. Like he could have been regularly. Patrick about that too. He did see Joel regularly, but hadn't seen him in a little bit before he died. So it was hard. So I wish I had gotten a chance to talk to him and be like, hey, you love us that much. That would have been
Right, right.
fun. But I knew that he loved us. He really, yeah, he was he wanted us to be like Charles Bronson, and he like real action heroes.
Yeah, like Rambo, Chuck Norris, like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and they came across. I mean, you you guys conveyed that very well. That was awesome. And just like the cult following, it's not a cult following, but just the following that just the Frog Brothers have. I mean, carried on through the sequels. The Bloodlines and Thirst. Right? Those are the other two.
Yeah, well, Bloodlines is I think a comic book series. I think that's right. And then the second one is The Tribe,
The Tribe.
which
I'm
is
sorry,
which
Tribe.
Feldman, which is a tribute to the Frog Brothers. It was a kind of an interesting piece of the story that he was operating without Alan, and like why and all that sort of stuff. And
Right.
so yeah, I think that's kind of cool. I mean, also by the way, I want to go back to the thing about connecting to the Frog Brothers. Like connecting to us as a kid. It's like I hear that a bunch, and I relate to that because I have characters like that in movies that I relate to as well. And I just love it because like you're saying, like, he was a zombie or a ninja, I mean, and it's like, yeah, people went out and played the Frog Brothers, and and I just feel it was such an honor. I played $6 Million Man, I played,
Right.
those
Yep.
things,
Yep. The A
So,
Team, stuff like that.
yeah,
Right.
the A Team, totally.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. And again, like such, you've been involved in so many great films, and I know you talk about Lost Boys a lot, so I really appreciate you. And it seems like you genuinely seem to love the movie, as well. Like I've seen a bunch of interviews with you and panels and things like that, and I can tell, and I can tell you guys are all friends too, which is really refreshing.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's like I love the movie. We all love the movie. I mean, as much for what the final product was as the experience of making it, And so, yeah, it was a really amazing time, amazing experience. I'm sure I'm making it seem, in retrospect, like better than it was. Like, I'm sure I can remember that there were like frustrating times, but
Yeah, I'm sure it's not easy. I mean, making a movie is not easy, but looking once you're finished with that product, and then you have so much, it has so much love internationally throughout the world. It's not just a fly by night, or there's not just like a couple people. Like everybody loves Lost Boys. There's nobody I know that doesn't love that movie, and the Frog Brothers are, like I said, a key component to that whole thing. Like it all just fits together so well. There's something for everyone. There's a love story going on. There's the vampires. There's the Frog Brothers. There's the
yeah.
grandpa, the recent divorce. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of really cool stuff going on it in it.
Good kids and bad kids, and
Right? Yeah. No. Exactly. 100%. 100%.
Yeah,
So,
the thing about it is like I talk about Lost Boys a lot also because that's the biggest thing I've done. I mean, I've done other big, bigger parts, but they were for smaller projects, and so all the big things I've done have, Lost Boys is kind of by far the most significant thing I've done so far. I still hope there's more to come. Big ones
there's
like that to come.
definitely, definitely. And you directed and wrote a movie called Rooster, right?
Yeah, directing has kind of come back to me a little bit because like when I directed Rooster, I was really in that phase. I was really just, I directed it with other people actually. I directed. I had really another director on set, and then the director in post production. So I was more just kind of facilitating it getting made. I'm now putting some projects together where I'm actually going to probably be directing, more deliberately, and I've kind of come to embrace it a little bit. So,
Right. That's
you know,
awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's exciting because it's, director. I write and I love to write, and I act. I love both of those things. But the producer and the director are the ones that actually get it done. So
right, right. But just
I'm
just
really,
to see your progression, coming from a young actor in Lost Boys all the way through the things you've been in, now up to like producing, directing, and writing and that kind of thing. That's pretty cool, man. That's really cool.
thank you, man. Thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for
it's a lot
sure.
of fun.
So, and I know you're busy, so I'm being mindful of your time. So now we'll get to the gnarly versus rad part.
Yeah, yeah.
So we wanted to talk about a couple different families, well, two different families, the Emerson family from the Lost Boys, and another award-winning film just like the Lost Boys, Poltergeist, and we have the Freelings on the Poltergeist side. So Gnarly is gonna take Poltergeist, Rad's gonna take the Lost Boys side.
I'll represent the Emersons.
So I want to start this with a question though. Does it seem like in the 80s, both of these movies I think have the same kind of feel in the fact that the families seem kind of oblivious? Like in the 80s, were we that oblivious to like vampires and ghosts and stuff like that? Or am I wrong about that? And how does that translate to the Emerson family and the Lost Boys?
That's funny. I think that like okay, so yeah, I think that there was because like everything was kind of a little bit light, like a little bit like they didn't take it that seriously. I mean, I do think that in the case of the Emersons, I mean, in the case of both families, but I will say to give the Emersons credit, there was some real alarm that started happening, mostly from
Right,
Corey Haim, thanks to us, from
right,
Sam. But it's like, the family really, and I guess it's really just Sam that was the piece of the family that really was there for him to like, to come in and kick ass. But so I think in that sense that the family, both cases, the families, worked together. But really with Lost Boys, it was really just the brothers on their own.
right, right. It seems like the mom was oblivious. It seemed like Lucy was oblivious. What about Grandpa? Does it seem like he kind of knew the whole time what was going on and just didn't say anything?
Yeah, that's what it sort of seems like in the end with the whole like that's one thing about Santa Carla I never could stomach, all the damn vampires. And it's
Yeah.
like, was he just like, look, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm too old to like, make a difference. So, that's what I think. Yeah, I think that's a good point. He was, I mean, not exactly oblivious, maybe more like resigned to not do anything about it.
Right.
But I will say that Lucy was pretty oblivious, even though I love her character.
Yeah, same.
She was
Yeah.
like really missed a lot of the key signs.
Yeah. And Diane Weiss, she played that so well, like the loving, compassionate, but somewhat oblivious. Like your son's telling you that the guy you're dating is a vampire and you don't even like pay attention to it at all. Like not even entertain
Right.
anything about it.
Right. And she's like, I know what this is about. This is about Max. It's like,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. He's not trying to replace your father. No, no, that's not what we're talking about here. It's much
Exactly.
darker.
So I mean, can you say the same thing about the Freelings?
Well,
That
that's what I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Well, no,
man.
I was just going to say, like, what's the Freelings? They were oblivious, I think, to the danger of it. Certainly early on, they were like playing games in the kitchen, stuff like
Yes,
that.
that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, if there's things that are moving, that are stacking chairs on top of tables in my kitchen, then I'm gonna definitely probably not mess around with that. I'm not going to say, well, let's investigate and let's hang out in the house, you know?
Right. I'd be like, I'm out. Let's
Yes.
call someone, you know.
Right. Yeah. We're going to call the cops. We're going to call the army. We're going to call the investigators.
Right.
It seems like the Freelings. I noticed there was a lot more crying, I think. And also like the way Joe Beth Williams played that was like it gives me chill. Like when Carol Ann comes down the steps and that spirit goes through her body and she's like, like the way dude, like it gives me chills every time. Like that was so it was so amazing. They
It's
seem
true.
maybe more not more connected. Maybe because
Well,
Carol Ann's
maybe.
younger, you know, and so they're more protected.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of thinking too. I was thinking that they came together as a family more. It was really the family that solved it in Poltergeist, right? I mean, they came together as a family and they solved it. In Lost Boys, that was not the case. Lost Boys, it was just the brothers, really.
Right.
Until, I mean, even at the end, Lucy, as much as I love her, no fight at all. She's just gonna,
She's still almost like, well, that happened. You know, it's like, what? Like, she's not freaking out or anything.
like reaching her hand up. It's like, no, no.
Yeah, there's a little more to it than that again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like there's probably more fight in the Emersons and more. The Emersons were more maybe like physically able to fight, like more
Yeah.
brutal, like like hand to hand combat almost.
Right,
And
right.
the Freelings were more spiritual. It was more of a spiritual battle too, and I think that makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think it goes back to that, like you have a 17-year-old or whatever he was, 17 or 18-year-old and a 14-year-old, so that's older already. I mean, it's funny because it's like that's the age difference of my boys. I have like 12 and a 16-year-old. And it's
Right.
like I already can tell that they're not as vulnerable as they were, and
Right.
so I think there's something there too that this was a movie about coming of age and dealing with that's what it is. It in Lost Boys, it was like a movie about coming of age and dealing with stuff because you have to. You're the only one who's going to deal with it, kind of thing. Whereas with the Freelings, Poltergeist was more about like this is a story about this family and how they together overcame.
Right. Yeah. And then if you just look, Poltergeist was 82, Lost Boys was 87, just the difference in the family dynamic between those 5 years.
Interesting.
Poltergeist, a traditional family. Um, Lost Boys, she's recently going through a divorce, going to
Yeah,
live.
broken family.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's pretty interesting dynamic there too.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that the Emersons are better. I, isn't that we're supposed to, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. So you think the Emersons are better? I think the Freelings are better. I think it was probably more difficult because they had the weakness of having such a young child that they were trying to protect.
Right,
Whereas
right.
the Emersons had some, they had some fight to them, and they had the brothers.
Yeah, they had the brothers, and very handsome people, those brothers. So I think we got that going first. I mean, not to take anything away from the Freelings, all very beautiful people, Freelings,
Right,
but right, but like Corey Haim and Jason Patrick were especially good-looking kids.
for sure. Yeah,
Especially.
100%. Everybody, and I saw you on a panel. They asked like if you could play someone else, who would you want to be? And you're like, I wouldn't mind playing Michael's part, And it's
Yeah,
he
did I
was.
say that? That's
You did, yeah. And then you had been asked about like your crushes, and I was surprised that you didn't say it at first, but then you did circle back to Jamie Gertz because she was another heartthrob, back in that time period. It was that cast is just loaded with models and great looking people and youth and
yeah,
exuberance and
it's so true. And Jamie, I think that I could not consider her. I mean, in separating who's a crush and who's just someone I thought was sexy, beautiful. Like I never really thought I had a shot with her in the slightest, so it was hard to have a real. I mean, I guess that you can have a crush on someone, but I feel like part of having a crush is like thinking that you might have a shot with them.
yeah,
I never
agreed.
thought I had a shot with her.
What's your age difference with her?
So I think she was like 19. I could be wrong, but I think she was like 19 when we were doing the movie, and I was 16. I had just turned 16.
Okay.
2
Okay.
years. I mean, not because of the age difference, just because of just well, also being 15 going on 16, and I wasn't exactly like a player, kind of kid. I was just sort of like, kind of a kid. So she was way out of my league
I think the age difference makes a big difference too, though, because
at
if
that age.
yes,
Yeah,
at that age particularly, yeah, for sure, for sure. So again, I know how busy you are, and I just wanted to thank you again so much for having this conversation with me. I really appreciate it, and for being the first
definitely.
guest on my show. That's awesome. That says a lot about you because you're in high demand and you got a lot going on, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with me, man. I really appreciate it.
Definitely, man. Definitely. It was great to talk. It was a cool, new, different kind of format with this debate thing that I dug it.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I appreciate
Good
it.
luck with the show. I'm proud to be the first. I'm proud to kick it off. Good luck with the show, and maybe I'll come back another time too. And
I'd love to have you, man. Anytime, brother.